our good friend, fresh back from Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl, the man who pens the MMQB for Sports Illustrated so expertly every week. Albert Breer back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Albert?
I'm good. How you doing, Rich?
I am great. So what was the thing that everyone was talking about down there? As you know, honestly, if I had to put a list of NFL events, the most gossip-ridden NFL events, I'd go Combine 1, right?
Right.
It would be Senior Bowl week 2 and then Super Bowl week 3. I think if I had to do a power ranking of most gossip-laden NFL weeks, number 2 would be Senior Bowl, in my estimation.
Yeah.
Would you agree on that front? Yeah?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's good, too, because as you know, and I know you've been in these situations, it's a little bit of a smaller circle, I would say, at the Senior Bowl versus the Combine.
Right.
And that actually lends itself to more gossip for obvious reasons. So it's always a good week. And I'd say a couple things. I mean, first of all, the Brian Flores lawsuit dropping as we were all out of practice. I think it was Wednesday. Obviously, like by the time, I'd say within the half hour of that dropping, it was basically what everyone was talking about. And so many people there obviously have connections to Brian Flores and know him. And then, a lot of coaches, a lot of young scouts are affected by this and affected by this topic and have been affected by this topic. So that's one. And then I think number 2 is the quarterback situation going into the offseason and how uncertain everything is and how average the group of the Senior Bowl look. And this is a Senior Bowl where, pretty much every one of the top guys except Matt Corral was out there practicing. And I'm telling you, Rich, there was a little bit of I don't know, I don't know if there's a single starter out here. There's a single NFL starter out here. So that, I think that sort of adds to the uncertainty of, is Russell Wilson going to be available? Is Aaron Rodgers going to be available? What's going to happen with Deshaun Watson? And so, last year, it felt like there was going to be this, land rush for quarterbacks. And I don't think it quite played out that way, and this year, because the draft class is not great at the position, I would say probably the worst since 2013 at the very least. I think that there's going to be more suitors out there looking for veteran quarterbacks, which could jack the market up for those who are available.
Okay, so let's take that part first then. What is the general sense of Rodgers being available? You hear that he's had great communication lines open with Green Bay that did not exist, certainly by this point last year, and not all the way up until training camp, I guess. And then you also hear he's buying land in Tennessee, which would be a fascinating spot. We on this show talked about it earlier this week, thinking the Titans would be a terrific spot if, again, they want to move on from Tannehill and eat salary and what have you that might mean. What do you think of Rodgers, and what was the general sense of that over this past week? Right now?
I don't think anybody knows exactly what to expect with him. He's unpredictable, and I think there are two sides to it. The first side is I think the personal side, which his relationship is in a better place with a lot of people in that building, primarily the general manager, Brian Gutekunst, and that makes a big dip. That's a big deal. I also think, that if you listen to the way way he talked, and Rich, I know, you pay attention to this stuff. If you listen closely, to his words after he broke Brett Favre's record, listen to the appreciation for playing in Green Bay, the appreciation for being part of a historic franchise, the appreciation for getting to play his home games at Lambeau. He wasn't talking that way a year ago. And so, I think, on the personal side of it, his relationship with people in the organization and his relationship with, I think the fan base and that place in general is in a much better place than it was a year ago. And that's a plus. The second part is the professional part of it. And the Packers really did go all in this year and did operate in a different way. And for as much talk as there was about the Packers being conservative, they weren't this year. They mortgaged contracts. They took swings on guys like Randall Cobb and Whitney Merciless and Jalen Smith over the course of the year. And that's put them in a spot now where their cap is an issue. Aaron Rodgers is going into a contract year. So if you're the team, you don't want to let him go into a contract year and then risk losing him for nothing on the other end. You'd like to get him to sign an extension if you're going to go into the season with him as your quarterback. And then there are some aging pieces on the roster. And so that part of it, like where they were in such a good spot going into last year, this year there are some challenges that didn't exist. And so that's what's going to be fascinating about this is how do you reconcile all of it? The personal is in a better place than it was last year. The professional might not be in quite as good a place. I think it's unpredictable right now. I know they've met and they've talked, and that obviously I think the communication is way better than it was a year ago. But obviously that's like a big domino that everybody's waiting on. And if he does become available, then I think, we're going to be hearing about some of the same teams we did a year ago. And obviously I think at the top of the list would be the Denver Broncos. But a team like the Titans that didn't have their hat in the ring last year, I think a team like that, there are teams like that I think are going to kind of come out of the woodwork as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about Russ? Because I guess by this point in time, Albert Breer, there's going to be no change in Seattle, right? I mean, it's right. Pete Carroll's under contract for a very long time, and John Schneider, I mean, they haven't made any moves. So I know that the whole conversation is nobody knows what's in the mind of Jody Allen, but I guess we do know, stay the course. And the question is Russ cool with that? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah,
right
and
now?
he wasn't happy last. The thing is, he wasn't happy last year, and that was coming out of a 12-4 year, and they won the division.
Right.
And I mean, this looks like a team. I said the Packers need some retooling because of the cap, but the Packers are still a very, very talented roster with a lot of really good players on it. I don't know, Rich, can you say the same thing about Seattle right now?
Right.
I mean, and that's the thing is, so if last year was a page turner for Russell Wilson as far as this is going to be the second half, I'm kicking off the second half of my career, and I want to put myself in position to wear a gold jacket. And, I want to be all pro, and I want to be on the Super Bowl stage. Like, can he trust that the team's going to be able to get them there fast enough? And is it best for the Seahawks to go forward with Russell Wilson either? I mean, look, they've got 2 first-round picks. They need to rebuild the roster to some degree. Or they don't have any first-round picks. I'm sorry, I did the opposite of that. But they don't have a first-round pick. They need to rebuild the roster. They've got one piece in the roster that could bring back a lot. I think Jody Allen's role, and it's interesting just because I do know that there's a feeling there that she wants Russell to stick around. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, if you look at it, like what's best for Russell, what's best for the Seahawks, I sort of do think this thing has reached its natural conclusion. So, we'll see what happens, but it does at least feel to me like maybe the best thing for everybody is this is the time when you pursue a divorce. We'll see what happens.
Albert Breer, the MMQB Sports Illustrated, at Albert Breer on Twitter, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's now revisit the Brian Flores lawsuit. And again, I'm sure there's a whole host of stuff that passed your ear gate that's conjecture and rumor, and what you can feel comfortable reporting out. What was the general sense of the $100,000 for each loss tanking accusation of Brian Flores to Stephen Ross that you were hearing about, and what comes out of Mobile from your general sense of that part of this lawsuit?
Yeah, Albert? I mean, it's hard because it's obviously Brian Flores, what he's pursuing here has changed in another area, and obviously the diversity of the coaching ranks and the diversity of the executive ranks in the NFL. But I mean, that is a heavy, heavy accusation. And, in particular, Rich, at a time when the NFL is, pursuing deals with every gambling outfit, under the sun, whether it's DraftKings, FanDuel, those sorts of places, Caesars. Caesars' name is on a stadium now, which I think would have blown all of our minds 10 years ago.
Right.
It's just, I mean, and then they're going to have in-stadium betting, I think, relatively soon, where you're going to be able to prop bet on individual plays. The fact that the NFL has sort of gone all in on this now, and now you have a case like this come up. I mean, I think this is like Shoeless Joe. You know what I mean? If this is true, and so I think the NFL knows that this accusation needs to be investigated and investigated very, very thoroughly. And the hard thing is going to be, if there isn't a paper trail, then how do you prove it? Like, how do you prove if Stephen Ross said that? And I don't think Brian Flores would lie, but if Stephen Ross said that to somebody, how do you prove he wasn't joking about it? Because tanking was a subject of discussion like that entire year in Miami. And you can remember they were building up draft picks, building up cap space, building a treasure chest of assets, and trading away guys like Laramie Tunsil and Minka Fitzpatrick and Robert Quinn and Ryan Tannehill. And so, I think that the interesting thing here is going to be whether or not the NFL can find any sort of smoking gun that shows that this was a real thing and this wasn't something that was just part of banter inside the building. Because what everybody on the outside was talking about that whole year was how the team was tanking for a quarterback. And if there's any truth to it, I don't know how Stephen Ross can go forward as an owner. And I know owners don't like to be in the business of taking each other's teams away because they don't want to set precedents and all the rest of it. But I don't know how you have, an owner, you allow an owner to go forward if he is literally fixing the outcomes of games and doing it at a time when the integrity of the game needs to be tied up at the highest level because you're pursuing all of these deals with all these different gambling outfits.
And then what are you hearing about others joining Brian Flores? I mean, it's a class action lawsuit right now, other than Hugh Jackson raising his hand at Grambling and saying, well, there were a bunch of plans that Jimmy Haslam and the Cleveland Browns had that smacked of not trying in years 1 and 2. There was a contract extension based on how I executed that. Like, that's another, I guess, similar way of saying what we're talking about. But what about other coaches joining Brian Flores to say that they believe they were part of sham interviews and that something needs to be done on the Rooney Rule front, and thus they're going to join Brian Flores in this action? Any thoughts on that right now that you're hearing?
Yeah, I think you'll see some names added. It's tough for active coaches, of course, and so how many active coaches are going to be willing to stick their neck out, I'm not sure. What I can tell you is quietly, Flo has a lot of support here. And I think the feel that I've gotten just talking to people over the last 3 or 4 days is this isn't so much one guy sticking his neck out and airing his own grievances. This is the frustration of, the lack of progress over the last 19 years, reaching a tipping point and ultimately boiling over. And, I think the best way to kind of describe what's happening here, Rich, is that they're attempting to change the venue. A lot of people don't know this, or don't remember it, but 19 years ago, the Rooney Rule went in because of the threat of litigation and because Johnny Cochran had put together a report that basically detailed all of the issues the NFL had trying to become more diverse in its ranks or not trying to become more diverse in its ranks. Mm-hmm. That's how the Rooney Rule started. And the NFL put the Rooney Rule in to avoid that litigation going forward. The NFL, in essence, changed the venue from the courts to their own system, right? And so now what Brian Flores and other people supporting him are trying to do is they're saying the NFL system doesn't work, so we're going to change the venue back from the NFL system to the courts in order to put pressure on the owners and put pressure on the league to try to create some sort of change. And in that way, Rich, it's not that different than the concussion lawsuit, because the concussion lawsuit was sort of born out of frustration that the league wouldn't, like the league and the owners weren't going to concede there was a problem, weren't going to do enough to create change in those guys' lives. So they decided they needed to take it to the courts to try and get some level of admission of guilt, some level of reparations for what they'd gone through. In this case, I think it's just about trying to find some way to provoke change. And again, I think that they feel like the Rooney Rule. This isn't this isn't for any lack of effort by the league office, because the league office has tried, but it's more so just there not being enough change in the way the hiring practices have worked, on the part of the owners. And so their hope is that this will put pressure on the owners and maybe create real change, because change inside the NFL system hasn't worked.
Or diversity amongst ownership.
Right.
and I know the Denver Broncos are up for sale. Maybe that could be a start right there. Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. All right, let's get to the I guess filet mignon here a little bit. What happened with Jim Harbaugh in Minnesota? What happened there?
Filet mignon.
What do you got?
Well, so here's what I can tell you. Just as I think it was Adam that reported that Harbaugh had gone to Michigan and said, I'm coming back.
Right.
The Vikings were in the process of informing the other candidates, the other finalists, that they were out. And so, I think at that point they were sort of wrapping up their process, and Jim was the last interview. And I'm not saying the interview wasn't on the level, but they decided pretty quickly after the interview that they were going with Kevin O'Connell. And so, my feeling was, and my feeling has been, that Jim, I think, has always had unfinished business in the NFL, and that getting that close and coming within a goal line stand of winning a Super Bowl, that's always sort of lingered with him and sat with him. And I think he's always felt like I still have something left to accomplish at that level. Last year, as Michigan, was looking at extending him and ultimately decided to try to get him to take the pay cut, he'd sniffed around all the jobs. And I know the Jets and Chargers in particular had feelers put out. There wasn't a ton of interest then. So obviously much more successful this year, beats Ohio State, wins the Big Ten, goes to the playoff. Now, maybe my stock is a little higher, so he sniffs around the Raiders. And then the Vikings job becomes a possibility when a guy he knows, and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, got the GM job there. Now all of a sudden he's in position to get an interview. And so I think the question going forward is going to be, does he still need to scratch that itch? Because I do think him not winding up in the NFL was more about there not being an opportunity for him this year. It wasn't that he just chose to go back to Michigan. And listen, he's going to say all the right things, and maybe that's deep down in his belly. Maybe that's what's there. Now I'm just going back to Michigan, and this is going to be the rest of my career. All I know is I've heard for years that there was that itch that Jim Harbaugh felt like he'd eventually need to scratch in the NFL. And so I think at least that bat signal's out there now, where if an NFL team's interested in Jim Harbaugh, there'd be no reason not to at least make that phone call down the line.
Well, I guess the proof will be in the buyout number, right? What do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, are you hearing if there's a new contract coming for him?
Yeah, I'd heard there was an offer on the table for him, and that had been sitting there for a while. And listen, one of the things I really like about Jim that I think is great about him.
Mm-hmm.
I really respect a grudge held, Rich, and that dude knows how to hold a grudge.
Good one. Good one.
I very much respect that about him, and I do think having to take the pay cut, that was hard for him. That was humiliating, and I do think that to some degree, and I'm not saying he's mad at the school in general. He's obviously loves his players. He's not mad at his players or the people in the program, but I do think that he held a grudge with the individual people who made him take that pay cut a year ago. And I do think that was a part of this, was making them squirm and making them a little uncomfortable over the last month. Now, is it the reason he did it? No, I think he had a legitimate interest in going to the NFL. But if, doing this on National Signing Day made certain people uncomfortable, then I do think that was at least a little bit of a benefit to him. And I mean, it's a great part of his personality, because it's just kind of what you'd expect in a situation like this. And so yeah, I mean, I think that was definitely a part of it. And now coming out of it, It'll be interesting to see if he just signs what was sitting there on his desk over the last month or so. If the school seeks an adjustment, if he seeks a little bit more, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next couple of weeks.
Well, I mean, Michigan's best season under Harbaugh and best season in such a long time to be followed up with a month of intrigue and potential discord. Congratulations on that, Albert, to you. And
How do you feel about it?
while congratulations are also in order, congratulations on Joe Burrow saying to everybody he's still a Buckeye. And he considers himself still a Buckeye. I know that's very important to you.
I will.
So
congratulations for resisting the urge to send that to you either on social media.
No, it's all right. I saw it. I follow both you and James Palmer, and I see how you were congratulating each other and talking about, oh, we have the same degree as him, don't we? Because he agrees on all that. So I wanted to issue congratulations to you that Joe Burrow reminding everybody that he's still a Buckeye and he considers himself still a Buckeye. I know that's very important to you, and so I do look forward to the opening of the Super Bowl because NBC has everybody introduce themselves and what school they're from. I can't wait for him to say Joe Burrow, the Ohio State. That's what he'll say, right? That's what he'll say?
Well, maybe he won't, but Sam Hubbard will, and Von Bell will.
Well, of course. No,
we can go right on down the list if you want.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of Joe Burrow's former teammates on that
True.
Bengals roster. And by the way, one of the Rams captains.
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with Jordan Fuller.
Yes.
Now, he won't be playing in the game because he's hurt. But he would be another one of the captains of the Rams.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just hope that Joe doesn't say Joe Burrow, LSU, but also the Ohio State where I have a degree, because then
God, that would hurt for you, wouldn't it?
No. It would hurt for the production. Like they would by the time that everybody introduces themselves, we'd have to, it would talk over the snap. Like, it would be bad. It would take too much time. It'd take too much time. But congratulations.
Well, hey, you know what? You know what Joe Burrow does have?
What
he does have?
What does he have?
He has 3 pairs of gold pants because he was 3-0 against Michigan.
Was he? I don't remember him playing against Michigan.
He was 3-0. Well,
I don't remember him playing. I don't remember him playing.
Joe Burrow, you can ask him if you have him on ever. Ask him how many pairs of gold pants.
I remember him leaving.
For the 3 years he played at Ohio State.
I remember him leaving. I remember him playing at Ohio State, but I guess he did.
You actually don't even remember him leaving because nobody knew who he was.
We sure do now. All right, Albert, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
Soon.
Have a great weekend.
You bet. Same to you. That's Albert Breer, everybody. Always have a little fun with Albert. Or him having fun with me at my expense. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.